Hello, I'm Bob Mayer, and welcome to my video series on my books. This one is about a series of books that I'm very proud of. I graduated West Point, and one of the things that always struck me there was in 55 of the 60 major battles of the Civil War, West Point has commanded both sides. So I had to ask myself this question: what is more important, honor or loyalty? The Civil War has always fascinated me, so I ended up writing a trilogy of books about it. The first book is free on all ebook platforms all the time, so you can give it a shot, try it out for no cost. That's why I read the book. There's an image of West Point, relatively current, on the bend in the Hudson River, Hudson High as we called it there. And I think I kind of took it from I love this miniseries Rome, where two ordinary soldiers, centurion and a legionnaire, make all of Roman history in a certain time period behind the scenes. So I thought, what happens if we do this with the Civil War? So I had Elijah Cord and Lucius Rumble, two cadets whose fate intersects with a lot of people, but the book, it starts out with the daughter of Benny Havens, a notorious saloon keeper just off post at the military academy. And then we follow these men forward to the eve of the Mexican War, through West Point, graduation, from plantation on the Natchez and the Mississippi, Major Robert E. Lee at Arlington, and we go to one character, King, in Charleston, South Carolina. Travel aboard the USS Somers, which I had not known about till I wrote these books and researched it, but it led to the founding of the Squids at the Naval Academy, the mutiny on the Somers. That's part of the book. This is West Point then. I don't know if they have Execution Hollow out there, but wasn't much of a lot going on at West Point. At one point, most of the U.S. Army was stationed at West Point right after the Revolution. There's Benny Havens Tavern, with Sherman, with Cadets Cord and King are toasting graduation. There's an insult over the honor of a woman, Lydia Havens, in a duel challenge. Sherman finds Grant at the riding hall along with Rumble and Longstreet. They ride back down to Benny Havens to stop the duel from happening. This is the earliest photo known of Ulysses S. Grant. I find him a very fascinating character. I think he's gotten short shrift by history, too much focus on Robert E. Lee. They stop the duel, but Rumble takes responsibility for Lydia, and thus history's made. He has to resign from the Corps, but Cord stays in the Corps, gets a visit from the Vigilance Committee, but he doesn't resign. One of the characters ends up on the USS Somers. And then I go into the Mexican War, where, interestingly, Pickett led a very successful charge at Chapultepec on the Mexican Military Academy. Grant did not approve of the Mexican War. He gets married. Longstreet's his best man. We go Palo Alto. Grant's fighting there with Rumble. Cord is with Fremont and Kit Carson in the far west, fighting to bring California into the Union. A lot of history there that I think people will find fascinating. The second book ends on the edge of the Civil War, each man taking his place on one side or the other. These are the expeditions in the Mexican War and the Fremont out west, Kearney. Pickett leads the successful assault after James Longstreet's wounded. The Mexican War was, percentage-wise, the bloodiest war we ever fought in. A lot of people don't know that. Robert E. Lee was a major in the engineers. Book 2 goes from the end of the Mexican War to the start of the Civil War. Follows Grant, his trials and tribulations. He's relieved of duty in the far west, fails miserably in the civilian world. He did free his only slave, even though he was destitute. John Brown, all the people who were there when John Brown at Harper's Ferry, Robert E. Lee, Jeb Stuart, Thomas Jackson, not quite yet Stonewall, Even John Wilkes Booth was there at John Brown's hanging. So what is more important? The final book starts as the Civil War, leading to the crucial Battle of Shiloh. King chooses to fight for his native South Carolina and goads General Simon Bolivar Buckner into firing the first shots of the war at his former artillery instructor at Fort Sumter. First Bull Run, Rumble, who's been designated by Lincoln to be his eyes and ears in the Army, meets dashing young George Armstrong Custer. Map is part of the set we got as cadets to study all these battles. Grant is unable to get accepted back in the Army. He gets commissioned in the militia and fights in the West along the rivers. At Rumble's suggestion, Lincoln vaults Grant to general. Grant wins the victories at Fort Henry and Donelson, just west of present-day Fort Campbell. The actual location of those forts is underwater because of land between the lakes, but you can get an idea of it along the Cumberland River. Lincoln gives Grant command in the west. Shiloh, it's a really interesting place to visit. I love visiting Civil War battlefields. I'm not going to read this to you. This was General Sidney Alva Johnston's letter to his troops before they attacked the Union at Shiloh. And the third book pulls them all together and ends on the first night of the battle. That sunken road there and that image there, Grant, Sherman, Cord, Rumble, young Ben Rumble, that child, remember way back when Benny Haven's daughter was pregnant? He's there fighting now. So it ends at the end of the first day where Grant's sitting under a tree in the pouring rain. Looks pretty bad for the Union. Rumble and Cord and Ben are nearby in their own crises. Sherman comes up to Grant, and some think he might have been coming to tell him to retreat, and says, well, Grant, we've had the devil's own day, haven't we? Grant just says, yep, lick 'em tomorrow, though. And more Americans died in 2 days at Shiloh than all our previous wars combined. Here's the series with the QR code to it. They're all on my website and my fiction page. And this is my background and my QR code. I hope you enjoy the history, and go ahead and read the first book for free. And please subscribe to my YouTube channel. Thanks.